All right. So, first things first, I text you
Hmm.
tonight and I was like, hey, what do you say we spend 30 minutes because we continually talk about how we're eventually going to tell the world how DJTatious became the DJTatious that BandLab knows versus the Austin that you have always known. And there's a very sharp corner that was turned there, and we'll get to that. But I don't even know if you know, like, the sharp corner was when I sent you my very first song, which I'll mention later, and you said, "Do you want me to be honest?" And I was like, "Well, how am I ever going to get better if you're not honest?" And I said, "Be honest." And I highly underestimated what honesty looked like coming from you. So
Yeah,
15
that
text
sounds
messages
about
later,
right.
15 text messages later, your honesty finished and my music making was forever changed. Now, all of that to circle back to what's a transient, Matt Glass?
A transient is, I'm sure that there's someone out there who really knows what the true technical definition, without me, jumping on Google right now, it is the loudest point of the waveform, and oftentimes that is right at the very beginning, and it's oftentimes, and there's not just only the loudest part, it is also the most abrupt change. So like a really good example is if you clap in a microphone, it's just like one moment the sound starts, that's the transient. Actually, that's probably what I should have just said. At that one moment the sound starts, that's the transient. Now, with a lot of synths, there's a lot more, slow attacks, so you don't really have a true transient because that is kind of the marker of one, is that there has to be sound starts suddenly and loudly all at once. But it is, yeah. Transients are very, very important because you need to know when you need them, when you need more of them, and ways to go get them.
And if you want loudness, ultimately how to tame them,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
absolutely.
So, okay, that's great. That's boom. Piece of content number one. What's a transient with GlassGarden? I'm stealing all of your information for content.
Hey, that's fine. You're more disciplined about the content and marketing game than I am. I applaud you because that's one of the reasons why you've grown, you've gotten a bit of a following, is because of that. You pay attention, you actually think about it, and you do things intentionally. And there's so many artists and so many musicians out there that they just expect, I put all this monstrous huge amounts of effort into my art, therefore that should be enough. I'm just gonna then publish it, we'll see, and then everyone will recognize, hear it, and then share. But with the age of the internet, where everyone, and age of marketing, where we have so much coming at us and everyone wants something from us, you have to be a marketer. And then that's one thing I always appreciate about you.
It's one of the, and I'll tell anyone who asks, I am not the best musician, I am not the best vocalist, I am not the best producer, mixer, mastering person, content maker, but I do all of those things, which there's a girl who does a bunch of TikTok, social media, everything. Sides is her name,
Mhm.
and she's done some BandLab stuff before. But her big thing, her big ask and push, is to be good at making music. Is the bare minimum if you want to make a living making music these days.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. And now let's rewind and go back to the beginning because there's a story here, and I have a feeling that your story sounds absolutely nothing like my story of how we met and started talking.
Okay, so the very first time I ever met you.
The very first time you remember us being us, like where was it? Who was president? All that.
Oh man, I don't know who was president. It was actually, shoot, I want to say it might have even, it was a really long time ago. Um, So it was at the Johnson's house. Elise, Camille, um, the Johnsons, they were having some sort of party, or everyone was hanging out. So there's a bunch of kids there, and
And to
I've
preface, we are
always
both completely different people now than we
oh
were back then.
whoa, light years different people. Like for instance, I think I was actually playing in my first band at that point, and I only played bass. I didn't play guitar. Because I remember meeting a guitar player there that I was like, oh man, he's actually pretty dang good. And come to find out, he'd been playing since he was like 4, which was like, oh dear God. But no, and I remember you because I've always been a kind of like a little bit reserved, but always paying attention to everything that's going on. And I noticed that you were harvesting attention as if it was a resource that was going to be extinct. Like you made sure that everyone knew you, everyone saw you, everyone heard you. I mean, you were really funny and everything. Okay, Luda. But and so I was like, okay, yeah, that's his thing. He's the jokester. That's his. And sure enough, when you're like, "Hi, my name's Austin. I make the jokes around here." That's how you introduced yourself to me.
Of course I did.
And I was like, "Hi, Austin." I mean, we had a good time that night, but it was just very. That was the first time I ever remember meeting you, and I don't think we ever hung out again for like another like 4 or 6 years after that.
Yeah. Yeah. So the night that you're talking about, I vaguely remember as being a thing, and not because of anything that was involved. Like we were underage, right? So we weren't drinking or anything. Like
We were
I'm
all a
just
bunch of nice homeschool kids, nice homeschool
exactly.
Christian kids.
Yeah. So I mean, when you say it, the way that you explain it, I believe it, knowing myself. But at the same time, I only have like a vague recollection of like the one time that I ever went over to their house and was with a group of people. But I don't actually remember you and I even vibing until later at Cascade.
Oh yeah, we didn't actually really get to know each other until then.
Yeah. And I think here's so for everyone who watches this, which may it be few or many, the first interaction that I actually solidified in my mind as a memory of me and Matt Glass is we were both in the bathroom at church. And as I was washing my hands, you walked in and you were like, hey, man, you're looking good. Like you've kept the weight off that you just lost for a long time. Like, congratulations. Most people don't keep the weight off when they lose it. You're still looking good. And I'm like, thank you.
That's the thing that
That's
you
the
remembered.
that's the first solid memory. I had lost like 50 pounds or something, and like I had kept it off for a while. And in fact, I don't even remember what time of year it was, but I'm pretty sure I had probably just finished drinking a milkshake before you said that. And like
Right.
you were like, hey, like it's really hard to keep weight off. Congratulations, great job. Like you're doing a good job. And I'm like, I'm doing a good job. Thanks, man. That's the
Go
first.
get myself another milkshake.
I'm invincible. But yeah, that's like the first true memory. And then everything that follows after that, that's like a an icebreaker. Like you were very untouchable as part of the worship team because you did your thing. You knew you were good at it, but at the same time, you weren't out to let everyone else know you were good at it. You just came in, you confidently did your thing, and then you were done. And it was like you were one of the few, granted, we have a ton of professionals on that stage, but you were one of the few people who were treating it as if it were a gig.
Hmm.
And so I was there because I love to worship. Jesus is my Lord and Savior. I know how to sing. Like, whoo, I'm here to worship and have fun. And that's all it should be is fun and worship. And so the dichotomy between what I perceived as your mindset and my mindset, uh, just essentially made you untouchable. And so when we had that interaction, I was like, oh, he's a nice guy. Like he's a human being. And that was
Yeah,
when,
that whole delay to realize that I am a human being, that is not a unique experience. There's definitely been a few people in my life that have been like either, wow, that guy seems like a real jerk and is just well, and then I finally like talk to them and like, oh wait a second, man, maybe not bad, or emotionless robot, as I've joked about before.
and to clarify, neither of those things are true. Not an emotionless robot, as referenced in your intense art at times, and also not unapproachable. Very nice guy. So credit and kudos to you.
Thanks.
The Once we kind of broke that ice though, and I realized that maybe there was a kindred spirit here, I want to say that we became closer just through music at Cascade. We were both on worship team, and for anyone that doesn't know or doesn't experience church on a weekly basis, worship is, think of it as a concert before reading the Bible at church, but the concert is very much leans into the idea that music really transcends everything. It transcends words, it transcends thoughts, it transcends walls that you might bring in. Music really speaks to emotions in a way that someone just saying, hey, you should do this, never could. So, worship in church, we typically start a service with a few songs, and these songs are just really designed to bring you to a place where no matter what kind of crud you brought from the week, and we can all, whether you go to church or not, identify with like the crud of the week. And worship is
Oh yeah.
designed to, with whatever crud you brought in from the week, let it all go, man. Let's just sing. No judgment. Let's just sing. Break down the walls, be ready to listen and enjoy. Um, and so through that experience, both you and I being on worship, I remember beginning to vibe when we would do warm ups. We would, Scott, our worship pastor, the lead person on the team running the show, would say, hey, vamp C. And so all the musicians on the stage would play in the C scale or in the key of C and just kind of chill and vibe. And at that point, that's when I started hearing some of your riffs and hearing some of the punk spins that you would put on some of these riffs, and then just started singing along. And that's kind of how I feel like we more connected over music. What do you think?
Yeah, because well, that was how we really figured out. Like, oh, we actually listen to a lot of similar stuff, and we like a lot of the same things. Because I would just like play something from that I heard earlier that day or that week, and then you'd be like, we're going down, down and a little around, and it's like, oh, hey, yeah, Fall Out Boy, what do you know? And yeah. That's always I always like to do that stuff. But every musician's got their random little things that when they're just noodling around or bored that they'll just like start playing. Um, but yeah, no, I'd say that's when we really started to figure out like, oh yeah, we actually had similar tastes in music.
What would you say, or rather, do you remember? I'm putting you in the hot seat. You don't have to remember. Do you remember there's one band, one very specific band that you turned me on to that I have not forgotten to this day that became one of my favorite bands? And it was a marriage of metal and then my kind of electronic pop sensibilities. Do you remember?
Oh, Dead by April, but
Yes.
what I'm kind of surprised is like honestly, I think I honestly showed you Dead by April right when I discovered him too, because when you were asking that question, I was like, I feel like I was like, I don't know if Austin introduced them to me or it's like, wait a second, but yeah, that was I was actually very surprised when you listened to it and you were like into it. I was like, oh, all right, like he can handle a little bit of edge. There we go.
I had been really into, when you introduced me to Dead by April, I had been really into at the time Blue Stolly. and
Really? Cell
yeah,
Dweller.
yeah, so yep, um, Cell Dweller. I had just played a rhythm-based kung fu video game on the PlayStation Vita, and I don't remember what it was called, but it had more of those heavy, real transient heavy, a lot of hits in the song, syncopated
Hmm.
hits, real transient heavy, like rock and metal style music. Not to be confused with true metal, but more on that, kind of like Dead by April, more on that synth metal, melodic metal vibe. So yeah, Dead by April was a band that you introduced me to, and that I subsequently went and showed to my brother, who was over in Afghanistan in the Marine Corps, and he really vibed with. They had a track called Warrior, um,
Mm, yeah.
and he really vibed with that. So that was a way that I was able to even take that and show someone else and connect with them on a level that I didn't usually get to connect with them on. So that was really cool. So what do you think,
Yeah. No.
Matt Glass? What do you think? We went from meeting with two very different memories of how things began to vibing over music on worship team. What do you think made it more of a friendship?
Oh, that is interesting. Um, it was honestly did kind of. I feel like the moment that I was like, oh, actually, like we actually do have a friendship was when I think you had messaged me about. I think it was actually the fact that I don't know if it was that I needed or there was like two different situations where you had offered to help out. I think one was like when I needed like a lawnmower or something for my house, but I feel like there was another one. But there was like one or two situations where you just offering just to be nice and to help out with something. I was like, oh, that's really cool. That's different because that's one of those things. Is like acts of service is a love language for me. Like that's something that I notice. Um, and eh, because that's just the way I process the world. So when I remember when that happened, I was like, oh, no, we actually have a little bit more of a relationship than I thought.
Cool. I like it. I think for me, it actually goes to music. So after that first time of asking you for your opinion and then allowing you to speak into it with your honesty, it's funny. My primary love language is words of affirmation. So when you were able to give me all 15 pages of notes on my very, very, very first attempt at mixing a song and putting it together and then trusting you with that. But then at the end of it, you were like, no, this is legitimately really good for a first attempt. So after telling me how much it sucked, like you were like, but this is really good. I'm serious for a first attempt. And I was like, well, it was a first attempt and I wasn't perfect my first time, so no big deal. Okay, all right. Well, then if this guy's going to be honest with me and also make sure that I'm not like at the end of the day a pile of sludge with nowhere to go, it's like there has to be like the bait at the end of the hook, right? Otherwise, you're not going to keep following it. The
Right.
so I think that's when I was like, okay, I can trust this guy with my art, and I started to send you more stuff and ask you more questions and say, hey, I think I'm going to do this, or I think I'm going to do that. And then I think there was one moment where you mentioned something to me, and I was like, oh, like this? And you were like, oh, yeah, like I'm surprised you knew that. And I had been actively ingesting like just hours and hours of mix tutorials and just data about how that process worked. And I think at that moment, I was like, okay, I can trust this guy. He genuinely loves music, and he has not yet told me to, like, you listened to the things I sent you. Whereas most people, you send them stuff They could be the most popular person in the world and you have the best relationship with them, but that doesn't mean they like your music. And so
No, no,
you send them
absolutely not.
stuff, and a week later, you're like, "What'd you think of that track?" And they're like, "Oh, hang on, let me go listen to that." And you're like, "Ugh, you don't care."
Yeah. Yeah, so with Emerson, two of the two brothers that kind of like started that band, we all just talked about, thought about, lived and breathed music, and I loved that. And so when you were sending me all these, things like, "Hey, I'm working on this. I'm thinking about this. What do you think could be better?" It allowed me to suddenly like to do that again, to because even with some like my other musician friends that I have, like not everyone likes to talk and actually analyze and truly analyze music, understand what makes it good, what makes it bad, how does it work? Because it's just a different level of love. Like you can love football and know the rules, but it is totally different to be a player, run the drills, and understand the intricacies of this position. That's what I want, and that's what I like. So when you were willing to talk through all that and actually really dig into the weeds, that's why I was like, oh yeah, I absolutely love it. And that's actually one of the reasons why I'll just occasionally just throw out there on BandLab, like, hey, I'm happy to talk through anyone's song, is because I love that. I love analyzing music and hearing what makes it work, what doesn't, what could be improved. Um, because I just love it so much, and also, but I've also realized that that's something that's unique to me. There's not a lot of people that think about music like that. They can do it, they can write this amazing song, they can perform this amazing part, but they can't really explain it to you of how did that happen? Why does that work? Oh, I just wrote a great song. It sounds great. But I'm always wanting to go to the next step and like, why did that work? How can I replicate that? How can I use that somewhere else? And so that's why I love always love talking about it and analyzing that stuff. And why I'll do that for almost anyone at any time.
Well, then let's transition from kind of how you and I got started because it's a really good way um, to go from kind of our humble beginnings and still humble mid game that we're at now, but into more of a music setting and less of a social setting. Now, I know that BandLab is a music platform, but also a social platform, which has its risks, right? If you don't focus on the music, you can get drawn into the social, which we've both done an excellent job at sticking to the music, which I think is why we work so well on this platform.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you mentioned specifically that you're always willing to jump in and chat with people. That was my big turning point when I would send things to you and you would say, "Hey, change this, do this," or, "What do you think?" or "What do we think?" And we started collaborating on the Star Wars track first for the Band Lab
Mm-hmm.
contest, where I sent you what I had and you were like, and then you sent me over 9 tracks of guitar and bass, and that became Death Star Run 4 became our first track together. And then
Mm-hmm.
from there, we dropped in to, I believe I sent you one of my first contest tracks the following October that I put together all by myself, which turned out to be um, um, the Interstate. My Heart Was Awake, and so was the Interstate. Da 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 da
Oh
da
yeah.
da da. Right, and then you actually ended up remixing the original Spotify release for that song, or rather, mixing it. And so, when you say that you're always down on a level of intricacy for what you're willing to do for people, has anyone taken you up on the
Oh,
offer to rip apart their songs in a loving way?
oh yeah, no. I would say it's going to be close to a dozen people at this point. That
Give me three names
they'll.
on BandLab.
Oh shoot, names. I most of the time I actually don't. Most of the time, it's something that I throw out there to just a band lab in general. A lot of times, it's people that I don't interact with routinely. That's one
Okay.
of the interesting things. Now, like one person, Ms. Amy, like she actually sent me a song and asked me to critique it, and but that was, but that's one of the funny things is like she's actually a little bit more of an exception. Most people, it's people that have never interacted with me, not haven't done anything with me, and they just send me the song. And I'm like, okay, hey, tell me what this is. Tell me what you think. Which is, but like I said, because I'm happy to do it for anyone, that doesn't bother me. But obviously with Ms. Amy, because I've followed her for a little while, we worked together on a song. Well, actually, technically now too. Um, I know her a lot better as far as a vocalist. I know what she does. I know what she brings. But also, one of the nice things is when I get to know people a bit more, like with you, is that I know their limits better, and I also know like, okay, you can actually go farther in this direction. I am confident of that. With my experience of growing up in a musician household, living next to a professional musician, and well, several actually. Now that I think of it, and then also always being involved in music, always knowing musicians, getting a music degree. I know these people and I know these skill sets, and so now I have a little bit more confidence in my age and experience to say, hey, you can do better here. I think that if you pushed in this way, if you tried to learn this technique, the art that you are creating now will be even better.
Okay. Within that being said, what would you say was the worst thing about my music before you started giving me input? Or if you can't think of it right off the top of your head, which I'm sure there are plenty of things, what would you say is the most improved element based on your critiques?
So the thing that you've improved the most, you've improved your mixing capabilities by leaps and bounds. You honestly, there are guys. Your mixing abilities are right at like beginner pro, where you can definitely charge for your services. And I know guys that have charged people that are way worse than you, and that
Yes.
was one thing that surprised me. Now, as far as the thing, because the other question that you asked was what was the biggest? I think you said like biggest flaw when you
What was
first
I
started
worst
or
at? Yeah, what was my biggest opportunity
worst.
for growth?
Um, because you have a lot of skill sets, there's a lot of different places that you could technically go. I would probably say with um, the mixing side, it was low end management because you would sometimes, because you were so laser focused on the vocals, you would forget that the low end was there. Which is why Death Star, I sent you a bass track because I was like, bro, there is no bass.
There's no
It
base.
doesn't exist here. And you're like, it's fine. And I was like, absolutely not. I will be fixing this now. But honestly, that was a great experience because I hadn't recorded a single thing in 7 years. And so the whole thing of like, oh no, I'll help Austin get his song off the ground and present it well. That got me back into creating, which I'm very very grateful for. Thank you. Um, but and then as a songwriter, I think the thing that you've improved on the most is like previously you had your like your methodologies and your phrasing. You would have a lot of words. There was a lot of movement from 1 to 5 all the time. So what is that 1 to 5? Um, like you previously that was the only thing you ever did.
Sounds like a good
Um,
song to me.
I mean, there's a place, believe me, like pop punk is basically a lot of that. Um, but like that was the thing that you previously were kind of like stuck in. Lots of words and runs on 1 to 5, and but now like you will allow spaces to happen so that way your lyrics land really well. And now also like especially this song that you just did, Firelight, dun, 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 dun. I can't remember the name of it.
Bloody
Dang.
Mary.
Yeah, Bloody Mary. That's right. I was like, I was listening. I'm like, I'm so proud of him. Like the spacing's different. The range isn't where you normally live at all.
Uh-uh.
Like you're really stretching yourself, and I was like, oh, that's cool because it's those kinds of experience is when you push yourself and do things that you're not used to, that then you can use peppers, little bits of it in your music to come that'll be better for it.
Yeah, I feel that. That to me would be kind of like the first time you entered a band lab contest and the only time you've entered a band lab contest. And in fact, you won that band lab contest um, with "You
Part of
Get
the reason why
Me."
it's like I don't want to go in again because I don't want to ruin the perfect record.
Look, I've won every contest on band lab I've ever entered. Okay, but "You Get Me" was very much a pop song, like,
Yep.
and that's what it was. But now you're releasing an album in um, what is it? A week and 3 days
Yeah,
with
November 1st.
Mr. Robert Gregory. Um, Worlds Collide, a metal
World's
album,
Life.
and
Yes, it is.
it is in fact very metal,
It's
melodic
very
metal for
related
sure.
to Dead by April, actually, which is kind of
Yes,
interesting.
yes, I do. I hear a lot of Dead by April, which is something I appreciate about you because there is, man, who's the band I'm thinking of? I'll let it go if I can't come up with it in like 2 seconds. No, I can't. There's a band that I'm thinking of that's just like straight death metal, and they have a song called like "Raining Blood" or something. I can't. It's like
Raining Blood. Oh
it's
my gosh.
um
Is that Whitechapel? Raining Blood?
no, it's not Whitechapel, but
Oh my god.
it's like a
Anyway,
yeah,
I
super
should know that
popular
song.
late '80s. But anyway, the I very much appreciate that there is a modern sensibility about your metal music, you and Robert Gregory. The that you guys have created a space that is this fusion in the best way. So you don't go Justin Bieber, but you also don't go Raining Blood. Right? You
Yeah.
you're like in the middle. You've got the really cool verbs, the really cool synths, and the synths are usually stabby while
Hmm.
everything's chugging in the background. And you've got the synth doing the right, and so it's carrying
Hmm.
that vibe. So Worlds Collide is going to be awesome. But the only BandLab contest you've ever won or entered has been with this really soft pop song where you explored a ton of, was it falsetto or were you just really reaching and letting Waves Tune do the work?
Oh no, that was mixing. So I don't know. That's the only way I know how to describe it. Is it's basically using my falsetto and head voice, but instead of pushing air a little bit lower to hit a lot of to get that airy sort of like it's pushing the air higher more towards my nose, and then it's like yeah, and it's really it hits the same note, but it one's got power clearly, and then the other one sounds like nice and fragile. So that's what that was.
Okay. Okay. I like it. So no contest tracks this month,
No,
but when are we going to see your next contest entry?
honestly, it's going to be one of two things. The more likely is if I just decide like I want to go focus on contests, then I'll start entering them. Um, the only other thing is if I get bored or feel like I've got, where did the
I
balloons come
have
from?
no idea where the balloons came from. I have no clue, but
I'm just gonna
congratulations.
say you're the one that had your
Nope.
hands
I
on the
got
keyboard.
I got a drink in one hand. And I got one hand in my pocket and the other one's waving a peace sign.
Yeah, sure. But the only other reason is if I truly do get bored or like I don't have like things that I'm working on, that because that's one of the reasons why there's a lot of people that know this is I've said no to a lot of stuff recently, like a lot of collab requests and a decent chunk of paid work as well. That because I have a backlog of ideas that I was just like, I have to get through these. And so if I find when I finally work through my backlog, which is going to be a while, um, and I'm bored or I'm deciding to focus on contests, that's when I'll actually jump back in. I it's part of it is like I get too excited about my own little creative endeavors to even notice what the contests are.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm sure that you would have never entered the mix build better with band whatever the contest you won was called had I not been like go do the contest month after month. But you it was like 5 days. You made that song in like 5 days, 3 days,
Yeah, you
two
get it
days.
was made in 5 days, mixed in everything.
Yeah,
And that was the thing about it because I because you know the platform better than I do, and you know how the stuff works. So I just remember very clearly asking you like, I actually wait a second. Actually, one of these tracks I like the prize. Like I like the idea of working with Zach. Like that'd be really cool. All right. Well, so I need to get this thing written, but I know I need to be has to be out so that way people can hear it. How much time do I have? You're like, you need to get it done like Sunday. And I was like, oh,
like oh, it's
okay.
Saturday night.
And I was like, all right, how? And then by some happenstance, I was able to convince myself that I was like, you know what? No, no, because normally I'm so of the opinion of get everything right, rewrite the parts, re-edit things, remix things. Like the art that you release must be good and you must be proud of it because I have released art that I was not proud of and regretted it. And so I'm like, I will not do that again. But this in this situation, like this is just for Band Lab, it's just for a contest. You know what? Let's just go for it. And I never and the rule was is like I am not allowed to second guess a single decision because that's the what delays me. And one of the things it was hilarious because I think even like a week or two before this, I was talking to you about some melody line that you wrote, and I was like, dude, like just take it down a step, like why not? You're still in the songwriting phase, like who cares? Like you don't need to sing that high, like. And then I wrote that chorus, and I felt like a complete idiot because I was like, that chorus is so high, like this is ridiculous, like this isn't a pop. But I was like, but no, rule number one, I can't question my decision, and that was the chorus.
Super dynamic though. I mean, the song goes from really kind of in your wheelhouse, like na 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 to na na, like a ton of dynamics and really airy and not overly complicated. Whereas I know that a lot of stuff that you do is it's technical, and you do that because you understand the technicalities behind it. Music theory is a thing that you know. Music theory is not a thing that most of us latch onto in the same way. You have the advantage of academically pursuing music, but at the same time, even in my 50 million times of watching the same music theory video, like music theory for dummies video on YouTube, I still have only retained 20% of what that video had to offer because it's all like, bro, you just got to do it until you know it. Like it's like math. You just need to know 4 times 4 is 16. Like so, music theory is kind of the same way. You just need to know that this key is parallel to this key or whatever, that they're related, and then so you have the awesomeness to be able to tap into that on a technical level where you say, I'm doing this because this, and I know it's right because these rules, and I know I can break this rule because I know these rules. Whereas some of us run through the school hallways not knowing that you're not allowed to run through the school hallways. And we're like, and they're like, detention. They're like, why would you even give me detention? What do you mean there's a rule that you can't do this? And you're over here like, someone just got caught. Now I can break this rule and go because they're not looking, right? It's a very great skill to have and one that most artists with the advent of social media and going viral, one that most artists, quite frankly, don't invest in is music theory. So good for you. And I will continue to just sing my melody line and then change the key in the auto tune until it goes to all the right notes. It's like, am I singing in C? Nope, the auto tune went to a bad note. How about D? Is it a minor? Is it? And then eventually I click on the correct key and everything
Oh my
sounds
gosh.
beautiful. And I'm like, excellent. I am a master. I mean, isn't that how auto tune works?
Oh my gosh. I'm hearing that. I'm just, it breaks my brain just a little bit.
Um, yeah, I there's been so much that I've learned from you, and I very much appreciate it. I not only do I appreciate the music, though I appreciate your friendship apart from the music. While the music kind of is what ties us in this ongoing ecosystem that we've both invested in
Mhm.
BandLab. Um, Now that being said, my biggest thing in music that I don't see enough of with professionals in the music industry is transparency. Every
Mm.
professional will release 100 YouTube videos saying this is how you do it, these are the rules, don't ever break them, this is how I mixed this. I've even watched um, not Chris Lord Algae, but the other Algae
Oh
pr-
yeah.
produce for Angels and Airwaves the track Everything's Magic, and he'll go in there and just kind of start pulling faders and be like, "This is why I did this, and this is how I just felt that day." And it's like, bro, I know you did not create I Empire by just adding a compressor and compressing things on a 12 to 1 ratio. And like we're all supposed to believe that's how you got that amazing sound with one plugin. So with transparency being my biggest thing, being brutally honest in a way that only Matt Glass can be, what is the biggest concern you have with the majority of the mixing? Because we can't, as vocalists, we can't change our instrument. That's not a thing. We can learn to
Yeah.
use it, but it's the instrument that God's given us, so we work with it. So, what is the biggest mixing concern that you have with the majority of people working on BandLab, and how do we fix it using the tools within BandLab?
The biggest mixing issue that I hear with people, um, and how to fix it. So I think the thing that I hear the most uh, problematic with people is how they place their vocal. Because most people, it's like, they're a rapper or a singer. That's most of the people on BandLab.
Fair.
And then and they want to write songs, so that's why they're using other people's tracks and to sing and do their thing on it. But then when it comes to the production element of, okay, how do I sing on this and then mix it so that way it fits with the rest? That's like the most common thing, because then it starts to, because you don't want your song to feel like it's karaoke. And and so the thing that I hear most of the time is that people's vocal just sits on top and it sounds like the track is underneath. Now, I'm not saying I've never done that. Like, I know I actually did a cover recently that where the vocal sounded kind of like that, and part of that, there's a portion of that it's hard to get away from when you don't control the track, which is one of the reasons why I don't like contests is because, like, I want to control everything about the track so that way I can make the thing that I want to make. And I know that that's one thing that's very different about me from the average BandLab user. But what I would say that would a way to fix that is, really just people listening not just to their voice, but listening to the whole song and how it all works together. That's one of the things that's been a benefit of mine, is that my ears are good and I can hear a lot of things and I can understand what I'm hearing. And I think that the average vocalist, they're so pinpoint laser focused on how they're singing, they start to lose grasp of the rest of what's going on. So honestly, that's what I think is I think that's the primary problem is people not knowing how to place their vocal on a track, and so it sounds like karaoke. It doesn't sound like their own art, because I know that we all know that's what you want. You want it to sound like your own piece of music, and you want it to sound very cohesive. So to fix that, people need to be listening to the broader scope of the whole song together, not just your part in it. So that way, then you can, because that's where it starts. Because if you don't realize that, hey, my vocal's just sitting on top of this, and it's kind of it's not placing right. If you don't get that, then you don't understand that. Oh, maybe I need to lower cut some of the low end out of my voice, so that way it doesn't sound so big and boomy. You won't know to be like, actually, with this, more high productiony sound, I really need to do a double or a triple, and lower the volume of my voice, but then multiply my voice so that way it sounds bigger with this big sounding track. If we find a good way to help people understand that concept of listen to the whole song, not just your part, then I think that the solutions for the rest of it will just come naturally.
I mean, I think that's excellent. I would um, I would say my only caveat to that and to add to that. So that's Matt Glass's official answer, right? Of the thing that you have the most opportunity for on BandLab and the way to fix it. I would parrot that and then just add, do a couple more takes,
Oh,
get the recording
so
right.
true.
Um, my songs, I would still not even call my songs the best, but my songs have gotten infinitely better with my willingness to stand there and go, fire. Nah, I didn't like that. Fire. Like, no, I can put the air somewhere else. Or
Yep.
no, I can and there's no need for me to sing the whole chorus in one take. All right? Maybe my
Nope.
first take is the whole chorus to get the timing right. But then I need to go back and do what we call comping, where I just sing parts of the chorus. And I know that in BandLab, it's not super intuitive, but it is 100% possible as long as you are writing your words to not take up too much space. You can sing 3 words at a time if you need to. Hit the record button, sing your 3 words, and hit stop. Move on to the next 3 words. Um, let your let your recording process be your biggest process, and then your mixing process all kind of falls into place after that, and you can take all of Matt's advice, but do a few extra takes.
Oh man, that is so true. I've done a few videos on this of how I've told people, like, I historically was never anyone's first choice as a vocalist, because um, part of it was I didn't practice. That's on me. Part of it was also that I was good as a guitar player, so people would be like, "No, no, you should be on that." But one of the biggest things that I've learned this past couple of years is that exactly, like, nope, rework, re-record your vocal until you believe every single note and word that you're saying. And that is so true. That's something that I even did a video on, not that long ago, of that exact concept of, like, hey, you're leaving some of your talent on the table if you just sing it once or twice or three times and then move on. And I think some of it comes from that mythos of, oh, well, Taylor Swift, she just one takes her songs because she's wrote them. Katy Perry, she was a session vocalist. She probably only does like one or, no, absolutely not. They're such good singers that, yeah, they probably could one or two take it and it'd be fine, fine. But the best of them, nope, that doesn't happen unless they go back, listen, hey, as you said, no, I should place the air a little bit differently here. Actually, no, that word needs a little bit to get cut off. Actually, when I'm singing a note there, I should just kind of like talk it off instead of singing a note. Those sorts of that self-critiquing, going back and listening, you are absolutely right. That can change a person's song from being a complete dud to being a hit, honestly.
Yeah, 100%. And like I said, makes the mixing much easier as well. What is your go-to plugin when you're making music, and what is the equivalent on BandLab? I know that BandLab doesn't have the same kind of plugins that maybe you and I would use um, outside of it, but it does have a lot of really great parrots, including LA2A style compressors, EQs, and even though there's no graphic EQ, I would suggest that you should be listening to the kinds of moves you're making to your voice more than looking at them anyway. It's got saturators now. It's got a pumper. It's got delays and reverbs all out the yin yang. So what is your go-to plugin?
For me, right now, my go-to plugin is Vitamin. That
The
from
one that we can't do is add harmonics.
Yeah, yeah. That Vitamin has kind of changed how I mix completely. Because it is such for those of you who don't know, a lot of EQs. The reason why you need to use them as subtractive is because if you use them as additive EQs, the way that they're programmed and their algorithms behind the scenes, they'll start to add distortion and phasing. But the Vitamin, it's a completely revamped algorithm and basically new technology behind the hood, so that way you can do additive EQ with it, in addition to spatially adjusting how far left and right things are for a specific band of frequencies. Which is why I say it's changed how I mix, but that's why it's my go-to. There is nothing like that in BandLab, but I will say probably my favorite plugin in BandLab is the LA2A. Like that compressor sounds surprisingly good. Like for instance, a top secret project that I can't talk about yet, that I'm working
Redacted.
on with another, yeah, redacted, with another BandLab artist. And it's not just one song; like it's a battery of songs. I'm working on some stuff right now with him, and I just told. Normally, I don't do this, but this individual's vocals were so good, just baked into BandLab with their signal chain. I was like, I'm just pulling this straight in. Like, and normally I'm really picky. I want control. I want to be able to do things. But I was like, in this situation, I was like, actually, this sounds really good right out of the gate. I don't need to fix this. Um, so so yeah, that is. But that's also one of the reasons why I'm on the platform. Is even though I come from a professional background, I see how this platform is going to develop. I really do. If they just keep with it, it's honestly, it's going to change. I really do believe if they keep with it and keep with the development cycle of the technology and the community at the same time, it will change the music industry.
I can see that. BandLab is leaning into all these social elements while keeping music at the forefront, and that is kind of the sweet spot. It's kind of the kicker there is keeping the music at the forefront. So you're not competing with the latest cat video. It's all music all the time, and you're only there because you like music in the first place.
Yeah.
So that I agree. As far as Vitamin goes, just real quick. So Vitamin is a Waves plugin, and it's you were saying it's a non-additive EQ kind of thing that gives you a lot of
Yeah, I
control.
don't know the technical term for it. All I know is that the algorithm and how it analyzes sounds is that you can do additive EQ with it, and it won't increase phase cancellation problems. So it's basically it's a better, more clean EQ, in addition to it being able to deal with multiple bands spatially in a different way. So it's a very, very versatile tool.
So my understanding of Vitamin is that it adds harmonics at those different bands that create not widening, but in the same way saturation would give you not thickness, but like um, just kind of grit or I don't even know how
No,
to
it's not.
explain it other than
Yeah,
harmonics.
it's actually really not that. So
Okay.
you know your multi-band compressor, where
Yeah.
you've got your different bands inside of the plugin. So that's kind of the overall architecture. So you
Okay.
have your different bands and you can change them. Now, within those bands, one thing that you can change in here is you can change how wide the band is.
I do like this feature. Higher end
So
being wider, lower end being.
exactly. Or you can do things that are kind of like psychoacoustically weird, like where your low mid range is like way out here, but then your really ultra highs are right here. So it's a very because of that, your spacing in your mix just changes radically. And it makes it so that way it's very easy to hear things because now, in addition to them being panned left, right, and then front back with reverb, now you have parts of the frequency spectrum getting moved as well. So it helps your ear differentiate more. And then, in addition to those bands and the widening effect, you can also turn them up and down. So now you can deal with larger groups, and that's where vitamins use best is in larger groups or in masters, in order to manage different sections. Because you'll find, like overall in my rhythm, but in my rhythm group, I have too much low end in this specific place. Let's pull it down.
You mentioned something really interesting, and we'll only touch on it briefly, and I'll let you go. It's 11:11 here. Make a wish. But you said you can pan left and right, but you also said that I can pan front and back. What'd you say about that?
So this is always how I think about mixing: is you have panning left and right, and then you actually do have forward and backwards. So closer to me or further away from me. Um, because your ears are meant to hear in three-dimensional spaces. You hear something far away and your ear can identify that's far. That's what you're doing in your mixing when you're trying to use varying amounts of reverb and also lowering how much high-end frequency content there is. High-end frequency content gets absorbed faster, so you will never hear that when something's far away. So if you're using EQ, that can make you something feel further away if you have lower high end. Another thing that will make something feel farther away is more reverb. Hey, it just seems like I'm hearing lots of reflections of the sound with the sound. That's what reverb is. Um, those are things that help you when you're placing things in a mix. You can decide, lead vocal right up here. Maybe your kick is even closer to you, like, because it's like there's really, really dry. But just that difference of from here to here, I can now separate the two better, because of the kick has that really like hard, once again hard transient of
Transient.
the top high end that's really, really bright. The more bright it is, remember, it's going to feel closer, but then your vocal is a little bit back here, but because they're not stacked on top of each other, your ear is able to differentiate them better. So that's how I describe left, right, forward, backward, in a mix, and something that I think about when I'm setting up my mixes.
So you're saying that not only can I pan a track left and right, but using reverb, I can bring things backwards or forwards, depending on
Yeah,
how I use
reverb
it.
and a little bit of EQ, but yeah, both.
I don't know. I think that's valuable information for any mixer to know. I just wanted to throw that out there. I heard you say it, and I just wanted to kind of, I hear a lot of very loud reverb, as if we're focusing on the FX and not focusing on the vocal. And I think a lot of people, because BandLab doesn't have auxiliary tracks in the same way, I think a lot of people focus on just baking it all into their vocal, right? We just add reverb, hopefully to the end of the chain, depending on how you put together your chains, but we just add reverb and we let it fly. And
Mm.
then it just rings out and creates these resonances. Whereas what Matt was saying is, using reverb on your background vocals mixed with EQ can actually move them back further if you want to. Or, in fact, one of the things I love talking about on BandLab Plus Copy is dynamics. The idea of having a whole entire song that's upfront and in your face and quiet and acoustic, and then you get to a bridge and you use EQ and reverb to move yourself way back and put yourself in a totally different space. Suddenly the listener goes, "Oh, this is cool,"
Yep.
because you
Re-engage
haven't
the
overused
listeners,
it.
giving them something new to, like, oh, now you're listening further back. That's the weird little psychological cue that you're giving them.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of that, the things that we do in some of our songs, like Love and Arson, where we stack vocals and create layering, pull things out, and then give you a giant chorus at the end, or where we sing a chorus, the laughs we shared, but then we get to the end and we go, the laughs we shared, how is there? And we use dynamics to create these left, right, front, and back vocal stacks that pan every which way to create a sound wall that comes at you, as opposed to a verse where it's intimate and close to you. These are all things that we should all be keeping in mind with our mixing. And if you
Absolutely.
ever want GlassGarden to rip apart one of your tracks lovingly, just shoot him a message on BandLab because he said it himself. He's happy to do it. What do you think, Matt? Before we go for the night, I have dogs and kids. They're going to get up at 5 a.m. and I'm not ready for it. So before we sign off for the night, what should everyone know? Like, you have an album coming out November 1st with Bobby. What else?
That really is the most important thing is that we've got that album coming out. That's the thing I'm really focused on and talking about. There's more music that's on the way. There's several projects that I'm working on. And
None of them are with
but
me, so you can all rest easy.
well, and none of them are ready to be talked about either because like they're not finished. So it's like so yeah, it's all about When Worlds Collide, November 1st.
When Worlds Collide, November 1st. Full length album or EP? Full length album,
Oh,
right?
it's full length. It's
That's what I thought.
13 songs.
12, 13 songs. Okay. And, you're doing a listening party on Angified.
Mm-hmm.
When is that listening party?
Or that's something that me and Bobby we haven't figured out yet because we realized that with all the different time zones involved, we had to get a little bit more coordination. But it will be a weekend right around then.
A weekend around the album release, When Worlds Collide, listening party, where you guys are going to go through all 13 tracks. Are you going to give your thoughts on them? You're going to listen together?
Oh no, we're going to be talking because I'm going to be too excited, and then also it's always interesting hearing what Bobby starts with when he like shares about like his creation process, and it's always really because like I will then like remember like oh yeah like when I was working on this part like this was super difficult or so yeah we'll be sharing our experiences with the songs as well.
Cool. So in the meantime, everyone should jump over and not only follow GlassGarden on BandLab, but if you don't mind, follow DJTatious as well. Angify at Angify has an interview, multiple interviews with Bobby. One interview so far with GlassGarden, correct?
Correct.
On her channel. There's an interview with DJTatious. But the important part is that what Matt was talking about with Bobby, those interviews, you'll actually get kind of a hint into their songwriting process for this album. Bobby is super excited about it, which I love to see. I love when people are excited about their art. And the way that he talks about the collaboration process of, oh, I came to him with these ideas, and he was like, do you mind if we try this? And I was like, heck yeah, we should try that. That's it kind of parrots anyone who works with GlassGarden. The idea that you can come to him with an idea and that he can go, well, what if we do these 5 things? And you can always trust that it will be for the better, even if it's not part of your original vision. So go follow him, follow DJTatious, and thanks for watching. If you made it to the end of this interview, interview conversation, I wouldn't even call it an interview, just a conversation.
Yeah, if
Uh,
you've made it to the end of this conversation, congratulations.
Congratulations. You are a lab coat. And, why don't you guys go work on your projects? To the lab.